Hi everyone, and welcome to Jane Talks Real. It's Trek Tuesday, where I will be discussing and reviewing an episode of the original series, The Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, or Enterprise. Today I'm going to be looking at Macrocosm from Voyager's third season. Or as I like to call it, that time Captain Janeway fought bad CGI. We start with Neelix looking like he's getting a dental checkup. He seems to be playing charades with some alien, but then apologises for Captain Janeway's behaviour. Janeway attempts to apologise for herself, but the alien wants her to shut up. On the shuttle back to Voyager after a 3-day trade mission, Janeway and Neelix discuss the alien they met, known as the Tac-Tac. It turns out that the Janeway manoeuvre is actually a horrific insult in their culture. Oops! Next time maybe just flip them the bird. Because Neelix did such a good job with both the Tac-Tac's language and culture, Janeway suggests he be promoted to ambassador. Neelix has no time to celebrate because Voyager has not made the rendezvous. They're not answering to hails, but Janeway locates them adrift on sensors and sets a course. The ship still won't respond to hails, but there is no damage to it, no recent transporter activity, and the escape pods are still intact. Janeway tells Neelix to arm himself, and into the credits we go. Janeway and Neelix sneak around the ship and discover that a bioelectric field is interfering with their scans, and it's knocked out the main computer. There's a problem showing in the mess hall, probably Neelix is cooking, but they opt to head for the bridge. En route they find someone's tools in the corridor.
It's almost as if they dropped what they were doing and ran.
As they continue, they pick up a comm signal coming from someone's quarters, but it's just Neelix's ship-wide breakfast show playing on a constant loop. What it does tell them, however, is that whatever happened on board went down 11 hours ago. They hear a loud buzzing and follow a shadow to a dead end. Unfortunately, whatever it was doesn't know how to use the transporters properly. The computer starts making a fuss as environmental controls are failing. Time to get to the bridge. But on the way there, the turbo lift jams and there's a lot of buzzing going on outside the door. Something bursts through and goops on Neelix. Ever the diplomat, Janeway shoots it. With the lift to bust, they continue through the Jeffries tube, but Neelix doesn't feel well. Janeway detects several of the crew a number of decks above them, but they still stick to the original plan of going to the bridge. Neelix, however, is struggling with both the heat and also having one lung. A nice callback to the Season 1 episode Phage, when Neelix's lungs were removed and Kes donated one of hers to him. He can't go on, so Janeway heads up a ladder alone to grab a med kit. But seeing as this episode is practically a horror movie at this point, Neelix is not alone, and his screams are the last thing Janeway hears of him. Janeway makes it to engineering, but there's no one home. She gives herself a badass makeover, packs some supplies, and breaks out the big guns. Janeway finally makes it to the bridge, but the only thing there is yellow goop and enough blinky lights to make me want to hurl. Just after she gets off a distress call, she gets bitten by something. I hope it likes the taste of coffee. She locates life signs in the mess hall and goes there to find a bunch of the crew passed out, including Ayala, who is my favourite rando crew member from any of the Star Treks. Janeway tries to get sense out of Harry, but as per usual, he's completely useless. Then she finds BFF Chakotay with a nasty bug-infected lump on his neck. We finally get a look at one of the aliens, and it's not great. It knocks her on her ass. But G.I. Janeway don't take crap from anyone and blows it into dust. She forces the doors to sickbay open and is met with a phaser to the face, courtesy of the Doctor. Thanks to her bout with the alien, Janeway needs surgery, and while the Doc operates on her, he explains what the hell happened. Chakotay answered a distress call from a mining colony who was suffering from some sort of virus. He okayed the Doctor for an away mission, but by the time they got there, no one was responding to hails. The Doctor went down to the mine on his first official away mission and was so excited he couldn't stop reporting back to the ship. Chakotay very politely told him to shut up. The Doc came across one of the miners who was pretty screwed and had one of the fly holes in his neck. The Doc discovered that the creature was attracted to infrared and concluded that it was a macroscopic version of the virus itself. He wanted to bring it back on board for study, but Chakotay nixed that idea. When one of the miners begged for help, the Doctor wanted to break protocol and beam him up to sickbay, but once again, Chakotay said no. The Doctor had no choice but to beam back up alone, but the biofilters failed to catch all the virus and it was released onto the ship. Unaware of this, the Doctor worked on a cure with Kes. Things went wrong in the galley and Tom recruited B'Elanna to look into the problem, but one of the gel packs gooped all over her hand. The Doctor discovered that the virus was on board and Chakotay had to quarantine the deck. Back in sickbay, Kes was looking at one of the macroviruses under the microscope when it suddenly disappeared. It turned into a big boy that failed at being CGI as the Doctor struggled with it. He injected it with the antigen, and that virus was out of here. Unfortunately, when he went to administer it to the crew, the stabby big boys overwhelmed him and he was forced to flee to sickbay. And that's how Voyager wound up adrift. With Janeway surgery complete and the antigen successful, she and the Doctor come up with a plan. They will each take a canister of the cure and take separate routes to environmental controls on Deck 12. Whoever gets there first is to repair the controls and administer the antigen to the crew in gaseous form. There's a slight problem when the Doctor doesn't know the way, but he's not afraid to stop and ask for directions. Janeway shoots the shit out of 3 of the organisms, but the Doc is out of the game as he is overwhelmed and forced to take refuge in a shuttle on Deck 10. Janeway makes it to Deck 12, but the ship is under attack. It's the Tac-Tac, and they plan to purify Voyager to prevent the virus from spreading. Janeway buys herself an hour to prove the antigen works before Voyager is blown into a cloud of space dust. The attack knocked out environmental controls entirely, but the captain has a Janewave. She remotely activates the holodeck, which attracts the flying nasties right to it. She instructs the Doctor to head for the crew while she goes after the virus itself. She goes to chuck an antigen bomb into the holodeck, but she's knocked down by one of the creatures who was late to the party. A human versus questionable CGI struggle ensues, where she stabs the shit into it and gets her bomb off with a few seconds to spare. Janeway shares the cure with the Tac-Tac after they promise not to destroy Voyager. And that's it! This episode kinda reminds me of the movie Alien, one badass woman sneaking around the ship, hunting down a dangerous alien. But it also reminds me of the Enterprise episode Acquisition, because the ship is adrift and the crew incapacitated, and it's up to 1 or 2 people to retake the ship. That's probably why I love this episode so much, and it's great that Janeway gets to shine not only as a great captain when she's in command, but a capable one physically. She knows that ship inside and out and will stop at nothing to protect her crew. It's a good episode for Neelix, but I feel this episode should have been placed after the episode Fair Trade and not directly before it, because it would have been a great redemption story following his actions in that one. The Doctor as ever is great, and I like how he and Janeway have to work together on this one. If the Doctor made it to Deck 12 first, Janeway would have had to have talked him through the repairs. But because Janeway made it there before he did, he had to talk her through administering the antidote. There are some bad points to this episode. The CGI is pretty wobbly, with the lighting and positioning being off mostly when the humans are interacting with the macrovirus. Star Trek does practical effects so much better than it does CGI. Also, the best parts of the episode were when it was laid out kind of like a horror movie, with noises and tension as Janeway and Neelix moved through the ship. But after story time with the Doctor, he and Janeway seem to get from point A to point B very quickly several times, which removed the tension and atmosphere. What would have been better to me is if they kept that tone and tension all the way through and had the Doctor recount the story of what happened through his comm badge as they moved through the ship. Harry Kim was the only character without any lines in this episode, which is fine for me because I find him boring. But the others could have mostly been cut out too to give more focus to the present day storyline. But as I said, I really like this episode, so its bad points can't be that bad. So there you have it. That was Macrocosm. If there's an episode of Star Trek you'd like me to cover, pop it down in the comments or come say hi on social media. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and subscribe. I'll speak to you soon, and live long and prosper.